Hey there, honey. How's your day been? Come on in, get settled, pull up a chair. Let me set my tea down. There. I've been waiting on you. It's a real nice evening, honey. Crickets are out, the gardenias right next to the porch step have been blooming since Sunday, and the smell is the kind of smell I could sit in the middle of for the rest of my life. Sherman is curled up on the rug behind the rocker like the whole porch was built for him, which, as far as Sherman is concerned, it was. The porch light's on, the kitchen light's on, everything else is dark. The crickets keep doing what crickets do. It's good to see you, honey. Now, I have to tell you something. And I have to confess to you up front that I have been holding on to it since last Tuesday, 5 whole days. I have not breathed a word of it to a single soul. Not on Wednesday at the Piggly Wiggly, not at choir, not after service this morning, not at lunch. I have been saving it for you. Put your feet up. Last Tuesday afternoon, and I want to say it was about 4:45, I stopped by the line store on the way home. Book club was at Hattie's that evening, Hattie Beaumont, over on Camellia Lane. Hattie hosts book club every other Tuesday, and lately we've been meeting out by her pool because it's gotten warm enough. I had volunteered to bring Chardonnay, standard Tuesday. So I pulled into the back of Maple Hollow Wine and Spirits, Vernon's place. Now, you know Maple Hollow proper is dry, honey, always has been. So Vernon sits out on the highway just over the county line, past the old bait shop. Close enough to carry our name, far enough to be legal. Vernon has owned that store since 1994, and Vernon is a man who has seen every single person in this town walk through his door. And Vernon has, as far as I am aware, never once said a word about any of them. There's a convex mirror up over the wine cases that was Vernon's idea. Vernon sees everything from behind the counter. Vernon says very little. I parked under the oak tree in the back the way I always park. There's better shade, and I do not enjoy a hot car door handle in June. And I walked into the store. The little bell on the door jingled. Vernon gave me his small nod, which is the closest thing to a greeting Vernon offers, and which I have learned to receive as the full, warm welcome it is intended to be. I walked to the back, white wine section. I was holding 2 Chardonnays, honey, comparing labels. One of them had a little leaf on it, and one of them didn't, and I was trying to figure out which one Hattie would like better. And that, honey, is when the bell on the door jingled again. I glanced up at the mirror above the wine cases. And in the mirror, honey, I want you to picture this with me. I saw Cornelia Hudgens walk into the wine store. Now, Cornelia Hudgens. You know Cornelia, right, honey? Cornelia has been the most devoted member of First Baptist since approximately the day she was born. Cornelia organizes the potlucks. Cornelia remembers every birthday. Cornelia hands Pastor Bob his water before service every single Sunday, like she has been formally employed by the church to do it. If First Baptist ever got picked up and carried away by a tornado, honey, Cornelia would be found afterward holding the attendance records and asking calmly whether anybody had located the casserole dishes. Cornelia is not, to my knowledge, ever at the wine store. I want to be clear with you, honey. I have lived in this town since 2008, and I have never once seen Cornelia Hudgens inside Vernon's place. I had not even known Cornelia knew where Vernon's place was. But there she was, light blue cardigan, hair set the way Loretta over at the Curl Up and Dye sets it, and Loretta does Cornelia on the opposite Thursdays from when she does Birdie, which I have always thought was intentional on Loretta's part, because Loretta is a wise woman. Purse on her shoulder, Cornelia walked into that wine store like a woman on a small private errand, and the small private errand was the only thing in the world that mattered. And Cornelia, honey, Cornelia walked straight to the sherry section, like she knew where it was. I didn't step out from behind the Chardonnay aisle. I didn't breathe. I stood there, holding my 2 bottles, and I watched Cornelia in the mirror pick up a bottle of sherry, examine the label like a woman who had examined sherry labels before, and walk to the counter. She set the sherry down. Vernon nodded. Cornelia opened her purse. And then, honey, the bell on the door jingled again. I looked back up at the mirror, and walking into Vernon's place, work boots, paint on one sleeve, everyday cap, was Roy Crenshaw. Roy, honey, one of Pastor Bob's deacons at First Baptist. Roy passes the offering plate down the left aisle every single Sunday. Roy is married to Sandra. Roy mows his yard in lines so straight you could lay a ruler across them. Roy is a good man. Roy is not, however, a man I have ever seen at Vernon's either. Roy got 3 steps into the store. Then Roy looked up and saw Cornelia at the counter holding the bottle of sherry, and Cornelia, with her purse open, looked up and saw Roy. Honey, I want you to sit with me in those 2 seconds. 2 of the most devoted members of First Baptist, both of them in Vernon's place on a Tuesday afternoon, both of them holdin', or about to be holdin', bottles of something neither of them had any earthly business being seen holdin' by the other one, at a distance of about 9 feet. Cornelia, and I will love Cornelia Hudgens forever for this. Cornelia did not panic. Cornelia did not look away. Cornelia did not flinch. Cornelia smiled the small, social, Sunday morning smile she has been practicing for 50 years. Cornelia lifted her bottle just slightly, and Cornelia said, "Roy, I'm picking up some sherry, for trifle." Roy nodded. Roy did not push it. Roy is a kind man, and Roy was not going to question Cornelia's trifle when Roy himself had not yet bought what he was here to buy. Roy walked slowly past Cornelia toward the wine section. Cornelia called after him, easy, gracious, like she had just thought of it. "And you, sugar?" Roy stopped. Roy turned around. Roy looked at Cornelia, and Roy opened his mouth. Roy opened his mouth, honey, and Roy said, "For He stopped. He stopped, honey, and you and I both know what just happened in Roy Crenshaw's head. First Baptist takes grape juice for communion. Pastor Bob has been preaching every single quarter for 26 years that the wine of the Bible was, in fact, grape juice. Roy himself has passed those little plastic cups of Welch's down the pews of First Baptist 1,000 times in his life. And Roy Crenshaw, on a Tuesday afternoon in June, in the middle of Vernon's place, looking at Cornelia Hudgens holding a bottle of sherry, could not finish that word. There was a pause, honey, a pause the size of the parking lot. And Cornelia, bless her, Cornelia tilted her head and said smooth as cream, "Sugar, isn't Sandra wanting to try that chicken marsala recipe?" Honey, Roy's face. Roy looked at Cornelia like she had just handed him a glass of cold water in the middle of August. Roy nodded. Roy said, "Yes, ma'am, that's it." Roy walked to the wine section, picked up the first bottle of red his hand landed on, something with a little yellow sale sticker, walked back to the counter, and stood behind Cornelia like a man waiting in line at the post office. Vernon rang Cornelia up. Cornelia paid. Cornelia gave Roy one small, dignified nod on her way past him. Vernon rang Roy up. Roy paid. I stood behind the Chardonnay aisle the entire time, honey, holding 2 bottles that were now warming up in my hands. After Roy left, I gathered myself, picked the one without the leaf on the label, walked to the counter. Vernon rang it up. Vernon did not say a single word, but Vernon, behind the counter, looked at me. And Vernon, who has owned that store since 1994, Vernon, who has seen every single person in this town walk through that door, Vernon gave me a small, deliberate look. Not a wink, not a smile, a look. The look of a man who saw what I saw, and who was also not going to say a single word about any of it, and who wanted me to know that he and I were sharing this. Vernon handed me my receipt. Vernon nodded. I love Vernon, honey. I want that on the record. I walked out into the parking lot. Cornelia's car was at the front. Roy's truck was 3 spaces down, and honey, both of them were already in their vehicles. Both of them, at exactly the same moment, finishing up putting on their seatbelts. Both of them backed out at the same time. Both of them rolled forward to the parking lot exit at the same time. Cornelia signaled left, Roy signaled right, and both of them, honey, both of them, gave the smallest, most careful little wave you have ever seen. 2 fingertips up off the steering wheel, a nod from Cornelia, a tip of the cap from Roy, and then they were gone in opposite directions, and so was I. I drove home down Magnolia, honey. The light was getting golden. The crepe myrtles are still going, pink and white. They have been going strong for 3 weeks, and I keep thinking they are going to start to fade, but they have not. The daylilies along the railroad tie border at the courthouse are open. The big hostas in the shady part of the square are putting up their flower stalks. The air smelled like cut grass and somebody's grill in the gardenia from the Wexler's bush on the corner of Magnolia and 3rd. There was a truck going the other way with the windows down, and somebody playing something twangy I think was Alan Jackson, but I will not swear to it. I had my windows down too. I was driving slow. I was laughing, honey. I was laughing the whole way down Magnolia. Not loud. The kind of laughing you do alone in a car when something has just happened and you cannot quite believe you got to see it. The kind of laughing where you keep replaying one part in your head. For me, it was Roy stopping at For Commune, and every time you replay it, the laughing starts back up. I drove past First Methodist. The flag was up. The sign said, Sunday service 9 and 11, come hungry, the way it always does. I gave the sign a small private wave because that is my church. I love them all, honey. Pastor Bob, Pastor Tom, Cornelia, Roy, Vernon, the whole of it. I turned onto our street. The Wexler's magnolia leaves are still glossy. The Sutton boys had left a soccer ball in their front yard. The whole block was quiet. I pulled into the drive. Sherman, the cat, was waiting at the back door because Sherman is unimpressed with my schedule, and Sherman expects his dinner the moment I am home. I fed Sherman. Sherman was unimpressed with what I gave him. Sherman has been unimpressed with what I have given him every single evening for 9 years, and the search for the food that Sherman would actually approve of continues. I put the Chardonnay in the refrigerator. I changed out of my errand clothes into something a person could wear out by a pool without looking like they were trying. I redid my lipstick. I checked the back door twice the way I always do. And then I drove over to Hattie's. Now, honey, before I get into book club, I want to say one more thing about what had just happened, and then I am going to leave it alone. It was the small, careful waves in the parking lot that got me. Not the bottles, not the trifle, not the chicken marsala, not the For Commune. The little waves. And honey. 5 whole days have gone by since that Tuesday, and I have watched the world keep turning. Wednesday morning at the Piggly Wiggly, I ran into Cornelia in the bread aisle. Cornelia smiled. Cornelia complimented my dress. Cornelia asked after Sherman. Cornelia behaved as if she had not spent Tuesday afternoon at Vernon's place with a bottle of sherry in her purse. And I behaved as if I had not been standing 9 feet from her behind a stack of Chardonnay. We chatted about the heat. We talked about whether the garden club was going to have the spring tea inside or outside this year. And then, honey, right as we were wrapping up, Cornelia mentioned, light as anything, that she was putting together a trifle for Sunday. Nobody asked her about a trifle, honey. Nobody had said the word trifle. There was no reason on this green earth for a trifle to come up between the bread and the hamburger buns. Now, I do not know to this day whether Cornelia knew I was behind that Chardonnay on Tuesday. Cornelia gave no sign. Cornelia gives no signs. So either that was a woman making grocery store conversation about her weekend bacon, or that was the finest piece of quiet bookkeeping this town has seen since Vernon put up his mirror. I said, "With strawberries?" Cornelia said, "With strawberries." We did not mention Tuesday. We did not mention Sherry. Thursday, I drove past Roy and Sanders' place on my way to the post office. Roy was out in the yard mowing in his perfectly straight lines. Roy waved at me. I waved back at Roy. Roy was, as far as I could tell from 60 feet away, just a man mowing his lawn. And this morning, honey, this morning I drove past First Baptist on my way home from First Methodist, and First Baptist had let out about 10 minutes before, and the parking lot was still full. And there were Cornelia and Roy, both of them, standing under the awning in their Sunday best. Cornelia was talking to a woman whose hat I admired from my car. Roy was helping somebody carry a folding chair. Pastor Bob was at the top of the steps in his white shirt, smiling at his congregation the way Pastor Bob always smiles. Cornelia did not see me. Roy did not see me. I drove home, honey, and I sat down out here on this porch with my tea. Sherman is asleep on the rug behind the rocker. The wind chimes a few doors down are doing their little song. The gardenias by the porch step are still putting out that smell. The porch light is drawing moths. Somewhere down the block, a screen door just closed. Next week, I think we're going to need to talk about Maggie over at Linda May's. I have a feeling. I'll tell you all about it. The crepe myrtles are still going down on Magnolia. The light's gone now over the courthouse. I keep telling myself I'll cut a gardenia bloom for the kitchen window. I never do. Pretty soon I'll head inside. Set the cup in the sink. Turn off the porch light. Probably read a chapter of something before bed. We'll see. You sleep good now. I'll see you in the morning.